Welcome back to Le French Rugby Podcast with me, Tim Groves, ex-Scotland international and adopted Frenchman, Johnny BT. And just feel like we're having a bit of a laugh here because last week you joked...
Because
Johnny,
he's massive as well.
Yeah, exactly. You know it. You joked that we'd have to get a giraffe or a rhino on. Well, we haven't. It's not a giraffe or a rhino, but he is big, Johnny.
He's a hybrid. He's a hybrid of the two. He's as big as the other guests that we've had. Looking forward to having him on. He was absolutely ridiculously good at the weekend. And as you said, another freakishly big human being. So looking forward to meeting him in a second.
He was. We'll bring him in shortly. But you were all over the first legs of the Champions Cup round of 16 for BT Sport at the weekend. And we can take listeners behind the curtain a little bit because you really went above and beyond the Call of Duty, didn't you, at the weekend?
We're not talking about this, are we? Horrendous.
All I was talking about was you driving Jill Douglas around the country. I don't know what you're talking about, Johnny.
And trying to find their bottles of wine in different garages on the way. No, we couldn't find any. I had like a horrible virus last week. So like vomiting, that's as far as we'll go. Absolutely disgusting. But pulled myself together. I think it's just a bug going around down here as it was back in the UK as well. But it was a big weekend of rugby. Absolutely loved being involved. Was down to Toulouse for the first one against Ulster, which was epic. Like it has to be. I'm not sure if it came across on TV, but the stadium was absolutely pumping. It was so cool to be there. And the quality of rugby from both sides was fantastic. And then down to Montpellier again to watch them dispatch Quins on the Sunday. And like you mentioned, it was a bit of a road trip with Ali Aitken, the lead commentator, and Jill Douglas, who I get like crazily. I was watching her on Rugby Special when I was 10 years old back in Scotland. So cool to be working with her now. But as I said, the rugby was terrific. I absolutely loved it. And again, you kind of get the feeling you're lucky to be there.
Let's leave the illness to one side. But we're starting Montpellier. They were 34-0 up against Quins with 50 minutes gone. So at the end, is there a sense of disappointment that they only take a 14-point lead into the second leg, or have they got to be happy with that?
14 points is still massive when you think about it. Philippe Saint-André described it this morning as glass half full, but they were utterly dominant for such long spells in the game. And Quins just couldn't find answers. It almost looks like, and again, I've worked on loads of Montpellier games this year for Premier Sports, but recently they've brought in a blitz defense. Like they play the way France do defensively. And Fabien Galtier was in the stands and he'd have been absolutely loving it. But Quins normally are very, very effective in attack, as we know, but playing into a blitz defense, what happened to them is what happened to Scotland and other sides during the Six Nations. Big men going hard at you on the gain line, on the front foot, and you turn over ball. Montpellier were absolutely ruthless. They were slick off turnover ball as well. And Quins did well to fight their way back in the end. But Montpellier, clinical, aggressive, and just bossed that game line. They were really, really impressive. And I think 14 points is probably fair because Quins did, to be fair to them, fight their way back in the end. They scored some nice little tries towards the end, but Montpellier, I mean, they were freakish. When they got going, seriously impressive.
And no Ronan O'Gara on the sidelines after his ban for an incident earlier in the season, not the one last week with Christoph Furious. But we spoke to Will Skelton, obviously, last week, and La Rochelle's keep ball alive philosophy that Ronan O'Gara has talked about before, that was in evidence again. They were chucking the ball around, about 20 offloads, I think. Comprehensive win over Bordeaux.
But that comes when you're organised. And again, amazing day for rugby. You can see the quality of the hand catch, the organisation off the ball, and how they put each other into space. And yes, every time Aldred, every time Skelton pops the ball up and offloads, you play off the unstructured ball, defenses aren't settled, and you create something, and they are just, again, they're one of the few teams that seem to have Bordeaux's number. They can match that physicality that Bordeaux bring with simple templates and how they're organised under Christoph Furios. They can match that, and then they've got a little bit of X factor. They've got a switch and a kick that they can go to another level. They can unpick defenses. I mean, so much so now you've got people over here saying, you know, should Bordeaux just stick out a bomb squad for this last game? Would they just concentrate in the top 14, the running they've got, because they need to find form quickly. But La Rochelle certainly. I mean, Jonathan Danty, Aldred, but La Rochelle as a team, they just had far too much for Bordeaux again, 2 times out of 3, and you'd have to bet on them going back to the Northwest this week to win again, to win all 3. So I think that's why everyone's saying, you know, maybe Bordeaux should focus on the top 14.
And you mentioned the crowd in Toulouse where you were on Saturday. they went down to 14 after 10 minutes. So what was the crowd like then? And will they be relatively happy to lose, to come out of it with just a 6-point deficit, especially with the late score?
I think our guest will give us a little more what he thinks, if he's happy or not. Initially, just such a day of rugby. Again, they weren't at Stade Ernest Wallon. They were at the stadium of Toulouse, or Little Wembley, as it's known to locals down there, which I didn't know. They were telling me it's Little Wembley. But again, before kickoff, the buzz around the stadium was absolutely incredible. And then to lose Malia so early on, you kind of had a feeling of deflation. And then Ulster seemed to run away with it, but they showed so much character. And again, when you think the 3 months they've had in top 14, how poor they've been collectively, that was the first time, and maybe a real moment, a defining moment potentially in their season, that they just dug deep. Our guest was absolutely phenomenal. The willingness to play to the end, the work of Antoine Dupont. Again, we talk about him on the ball, but defensively, the stuff he was getting through, the counter rucking. Again, you could have named any of them 1 to 23. They were phenomenal. And I think they grew almost with 14 men. And that might be the performance that kicks them on. So I think initially there was a bit of deflation. They were crying foul because they thought there was a bit of offside for one of the intercept tries, which didn't go down particularly well with the crowd. But I think with them going over last minute and getting that try to narrow the gap with Intimac, they'll be a little bit happier. They probably feel they would have won the game if they kept 50 men on the pitch and they would have clicked together as a 15 or 23. But I think being down to 14 and having to dig deep, which we haven't seen them do for the past 2-3 months, they've maybe found a little something collectively that will keep them in good stead for next week, but also for the next 2-3 months of the season.
Well, things may not quite have gone to plan for Toulouse at home to Ulster, but the tie is far from over. And we can have a chat now with one of their try scorers from the first leg, Toulouse's Australian second row, Manny Meafou, joins us. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. It's nice to be on the podcast. I just finished listening to the Big Willie's one, so it's good to be on.
We've taken it up a notch this week. Are you bigger than Big Will?
No, I think Will's a bit bigger than me. I heard, and he said he sits between 145 and 150, and I'm about 140 to 145. I try.
Lightweight.
You've ruined our intro as well. We build you as even bigger.
Played bigger at the weekend.
Yeah. I appreciate that. It was a big game for the boys, and Ulster gave it to us. So we're just hoping to get it over them this weekend.
Take us right back to the opening 10-15 minutes, because it didn't all quite go to plan at the start. So what were you thinking when Malia took out Ben Moxham in there and he got sent off? Give us your honest. What were you thinking?
Yeah. Well, that wasn't really on the plan of things to do during our first final in the European Championship. But no, I think he made a decision to do what he did, and it was an accident. And I think for us playing with 14 men for the next 70 minutes wasn't ideal. But, that's rugby, and I think the boys did well to hang in there for as much as we could. And we were ahead for quite a long time, but Ulster got in front, and, we didn't get the result we wanted.
I'm going to be honest, whenever that happens, I think we are going to be absolutely fucked. Come 50, 60 minutes, you're like, this is going to kill. Surely you must be thinking the same.
Yeah. Well, I'm not, obviously I'm not the fittest guy on the field, so I'm kind of worried about, one man down, but the boys did well, and we did as much as we could.
And you say you're not the fittest on the field, but talk to us about the try on a more positive note, because you were involved on the right-hand side, shipping the ball onto Malvaca, I think it was. Then you hit a couple of rucks on the way left, ended up on the left wing, crashed over. So you had some engine then. Yeah.
Well, I think once we get into the gold zone and near that try line, I think I'm encouraged to get my hands on the ball, and I'm a big guy, so I think 5 meters out, I should really get as much touches as I can, and that was just the goal for me, is just to keep working, getting into position.
What did Ugo, Mola, and the coaches say after the game? Weirdly, were they quite happy with a 6-point deficit given the context, or were they disappointed?
No, I think surprisingly, a lot of the boys were gutted about the result, and even at the end there, Ulster had a bit of a scare on the 80th minute. And so I think there were definitely a lot of positive to take away from that game. The coaches said, heads up, we've got a big game next week, and it's not over. we've got a chance to come back and get them by hopefully more than 6.
And does the game plan change this week, or is it fairly similar to what you intended to do when you had 15 men on the field last week?
It's fairly similar, but keep 15. Let's play 15 on 15. If we can play, a solid game like that with 1 man down, I think we've got a pretty good chance if we've got even men on the field.
Johnny mentioned Ugo. What's he like as a coach, as a bloke? Is he a guy that when things don't go to plan like that, he shouts and hollers a lot, or is he quite a calm character? What's he like as a boss?
You can get kind of both from Ugo. He's he says what he wants. He's very vocal, but then you can also get the silent side of Ugo. So you never know which side of Ugo you're going to get, but whatever the result, he'll have something to say.
Which is the scariest one, the silent one or the shouty one?
Definitely the silent.
He didn't look too happy when Antoine Dupont, when Toto Dupont's intercept went through, when Balogun went through and took that pass. So what did he give in the change room? He's been very tight-lipped. He said, I'm not going to say anything to defame Wayne Barnes, but he clearly didn't look happy.
No, I don't think in the position that we were in at the time in their half, and the boys were working hard to try catch up on the scoreboard. I think that was the last of our worries, is another try from their winger.
And you were huge at the weekend, Johnny mentioned it, but you haven't actually played very much in European rugby, have you? You played a load in the top 14 last season, but not too much in Europe. So how are you finding the difference between the two competitions?
Well, I think I found it very wasn't too much different. I think for me personally, I find it less physical in the European against teams that are not in the top 14. It's a lot quicker. I think it is quicker. But yeah, just a little bit less physical than the top 14 itself.
It looked clearly like you were able to make more of an impact as a compliment, but that's the thing, like top 14, you're coming against monsters every single week. There's a Will Skelton, there's somebody else your size in every other team, whereas in UK and Ireland, we don't make people that size. Generally, we don't have players, and we're more lightweight. So I completely agree. Going from top 14 to European rugby is less physical. So you feel like you can dunt more, you can get across the gain line, but it's just when the speed kicks in, like when you play against your Leinsters and things start to kick up a bit, that's when it starts to sting. Yeah. Completely agree.
No, I think that's so true. When you come across like class teams who can keep the ball going and they build up their phases, I think that's when it gets a bit tough. But the physicality from the get-go, it is a lot. I think it's a bit more physical because in France there are a lot of big boys, from the props to locks, and even the back rowers they're all over 115 kilos. So there's a lot of impact going on there.
But you're part of one of the sides that manages to combine both that power play with the flair, with the changing the point of contact, with releasing backs properly, organised rugby. You see it from La Rochelle, yourselves, a few other teams in the top 14. You didn't play in the finals last season, personally, but having contributed massively across the campaign, what was it like to be part of a double winning squad at Toulouse in France in the top 14? It must have been insane.
Oh, it's something I really can't explain. So when I arrived in November 2018, I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. And that first year I didn't play at all. I played with the Espoir a little bit, and then I didn't play much of the 2019 year in either. But going to the games and watching the boys couldn't lose. Like the boys were just, on fire. And of course we had guys like Cheslin and, Antoine and guys like that. But those guys are individually like freakish athletes, and they're all on the same team. So going into last year, we knew we had something special, and to be a part of that and actually playing during the season was amazing. And then the boys, to take it out in both competitions was just surreal. And I think for me, I got lucky. This is my first kind of involvement in this kind of professional scene. But for those boys who have been there for a while and who have been grinding it out, and guys like Max Medar and Joe Tekori who have done it before, it was good to see those guys win the double. And it was definitely a lot of emotions going around.
Yeah, Johnny, Manny thinks that's what it's like every year. You win the double, you party on the beach for 5 days. Is that what it's like for you?
Mate, you come over, you play in relegation shit fights, mate. It depends on who you are. Let's be honest. I was brought over for different reasons, but you've been brought over clearly because you have a massive potential, and you're now starting to absolutely killing it. You're killing it playing for one of the biggest teams in the world, which is ridiculous. So let's chat. Like, I want to ask you a little bit about your background, because you've done all sorts of stuff, and you started off in league. But can you give us a little bit about your background and how you ended up over here and the different things that you've ended up doing in your early parts of your career?
Yeah. So I started off with league. Grew up in Australia, so league's very prominent in Australia, and grew up playing that. Wasn't very good because I was so big and not very fast. And league is a quick game, and so I wasn't very good and didn't really know any better. Only went to play union because my friends were playing, but I enjoyed myself playing union. When I finished school, went down to Melbourne Rebels, did the academy there with a few of the boys that are playing here now. Steve Cummins, who is with Poe, and he's a good lad. And I met Will Skelton through Steve, so that's how me and Will got into contact. But no, my goal was to play Super Rugby, play for the Wallabies, and then see what happens. But I never got a Super Rugby offer or contract, and that's when I decided to firstly try other avenues, and that's when I'm sure you've seen in the paper that an NFL.
Yes. Talk us through it, because again, I could only ever dream. I'm not a good enough athlete, but there's certain, like Richie Gray, who I played for the Scotland team. He's 6'11". He's a freakish athlete. I always wanted to, I was like, would you ever try? His agent would get chirps, bring him over and we'll try him out, but he never went over. So how did it go? How did you get identified? Is it a talent ID system, or did you push yourself? Did you put yourself forward? How did it all work? And talk us through the system and how you ended up getting over.
So at the time, they were running trials in Australia, which is, they call it an NFL Combine, international, and they were running trials in Australia. And at the time I was living in Sydney, and my family's in Queensland, and the trial was in Queensland. So they had emailed me and said if I was interested, the trial's in Queensland. And I just thought of it as it's a free trip home. I can go see some family. So I went, did it, and it's professional. Hey, they measure the width of your hand, the weight, your fat percentage, and all that type of stuff, and they run you through some drills, and then from that they just narrow it down, and they pick. So they run the trials around the world, and they pick 5 guys to attend a 3-month intensive training, and from that 3 months you enter the draft. And then you get put into a team into an academy contract for about 2 years, I think.
So how far did you get?
So I got picked to go to Florida into the IMG Academy. And then my agent said, because before I was never keen to leave Australia. I never wanted to leave Australia. It wasn't my plan, and it was a bit, out of stretch for me as a young 18-year-old kid. And so when I got picked and I said, yeah, I'll do it, he said, all right, let me have one last shot. I'll go send your footage to France. They love boys like you. Would you be keen? Would you be open to me showing them your footage? And I said, yeah, whatever, if something comes from it. But if not, I'll go to America. And that's how I've ended up here. And because they said that I would need to be in France for my GIF,
yes.
Then and there. I left about a week later making my decision. So I dropped the American thing and came over here.
Before we get on to Toulouse and GIF, because super important, I want to ask you, what position were you aiming to play in NFL?
They said something like the defensive line or something, somewhere in that, in that line, protecting or attacking the quarterback. I wasn't too sure about where
mate. It's the highest paid. It's the highest paid position.
I love the idea because I went in and I weighed in at 150, and they said, we want you heavier. So you'll be gymming 3 days. We want you around 160 pure muscle. And I was like, I can live this lifestyle.
Well, not only that, you may have won the double with Toulouse, but do you know how much money they earn in the NFL?
Yeah. They said, rookie contracts are start from about $1 million or 1.5 or something like that. But, it was real cutthroat, and they were saying I needed and rugby was still definitely a passion and dream of mine. The only reason I had gone down the NFL road was because I had no offers, and for me, rugby was over. So when, you know, Toulouse and a few other clubs stepped in, you know, there was still a passion and a drive to make it in rugby. So it wasn't too much of a tough decision to, you know, choose rugby.
And you mentioned your agent sort of put your name out there and Toulouse got back to him, but how did that work? Who at Toulouse sort of saw it? How did the approach come? What did they say?
Or I think there were like a couple clubs, and yeah, I think I'm not too sure how that went down, but it was between my agent and one of the recruit guys at Toulouse, and I think they were just keen to get me over, get my GIF done, and then see where it would take me.
Well, I was going to go back to the dollars and the contract. I was going to say, don't worry, euros are valued more. It's more highly than the dollar anyway. Plus, you're GIF, you're awesome, you're young, you're a tight head lock. Mate, you're going to be killing it. Next contract is going to be huge, so I wouldn't worry too much.
That's what we're working towards.
Exactly.
I'm Johnny. I'm not even sure Toto Dupont's on $1 million a year, is he?
Easily. Plus, with his GQ involvements and yellow dressing gowns, Manny will be in them before you know it, mate. He's going to be killing it.
I'll be keen.
But so, like, you've gone from potentially to the USA, NFL is now on the back burner. You've come over to France. Give us like a little bit of a taste. You came over. You're only 20. You go into the Centre de Formation, which is the academy in France. How was that? You come in. You're 20. You don't speak a word of the language. You chucked in the deep end with the young French boys. How did you get on?
I found it really hard. Hey, like, not the offside things. The offside. I mean, off-field rugby was easier than the on-field. Like, because I had guys like Jerome Kano was there, and he's my dad's favorite rugby player. So that was one of the reasons I went to Toulouse in the first place, because Jerome gave me a call, and my dad said, "Yep, Toulouse is the one. Toulouse is the." You've got, and you know, I've got guys like Jerome, Joe Tekori, Charlie Famuina. So a lot of the boys that are in the, you know, in the island culture that were looking after a lot of us young boys that were coming over and, you know, doing that sort of thing. And I had David as well. David, I knew who's in the States, you know, American team. So we went through that Espoir phase together. And off field, it was, you know, it was good. And you know, I appreciate those boys and everything that they've done for me. But the on-field and the rugby that I experienced in Australia and the rugby here was totally different. And I couldn't wrap my head around it, because I was used to kind of like, you know, a bit of more shape, you know, everyone doing their job. And I think playing Espoir, it was a bit chaotic for me, and I couldn't really keep up. And I struggled like probably the first 3 months, and then you eventually get the hang of it.
A bit looser, certainly academy level, then stepping up, like you mentioned, off field, having Jerome and Charlie, like these guys must be phenomenal for you to be around and absorb and just see how they go about their work. Like you talk about absorbing from top level professionals, seeing what needs to be done off the field. I mean, that must have been super, that must have been incredible to have them to look up to and look after you. And then secondly, how has the change of rugby been when your involvement in the top team, in the top 15, in the pro level, in terms of that structure, what you maybe lacked or what you experienced in back home? Did you find that the step up with the top level coaching staff is much more improved as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think like when you step into that professional environment, like the players are more professional, the coaches are more professional, and you do get that. You know? But yeah, like I said, like you've got world-class players within the team, and I think it definitely does make it easier for me that, you know, you've got Roman Entamak running the ship, and you've got guys in the forwards like Charlie Famuina who's also helping you out and telling you kind of where to go and what to do. And I think that makes it easier as a young guy coming in.
You mentioned Jerome Kano and Charlie Famuina he had at Toulouse, but as an Australian and a youngster coming over to France, you've got a guy like Will Skelton who we had on last week playing at La Rochelle. You played them in a couple of finals last year. Did you know him before? Did you speak to him? Have you got to know him since?
Not real. I think we've only gotten a bit closer now that we're both here in France. But I first met Will on a night out with Steve Cummins. The Rebels played the Waratahs, and I think Will stayed down in Melbourne for a night. And so I met him there, and I'm asking him, oh, how do you keep the weight down? How do you, you know, with all the struggles? And he was real nice about it. Never met me in his life, a little 18-year-old kid. He gives me his number, and the next day he sends me, you know, some meal plans and stuff that he follows on how he his weight down. So I respect him a lot. And I look up to him because he's another, one of those, big number fives. And he had an awesome year last year. So, and he's playing awesome now. So he's definitely someone I look up to. And we've gotten close now that we're here, and he messages me from time to time saying that I'm doing well. And I really appreciate that, yeah.
After speaking to him last week, I think part one of his advice for keeping the weight off, no business class flights, Johnny.
Mate, fill your boots. If you go back home to Aussie, go cattle class, because if you're in business class, you're going to be stacking it back on. Mate, another thing, at the weekend, again, we were commentating the game for BT, and it said at the bottom, it said Toulouse's pack weighed over 1,000 kgs, which I've never seen before. And I don't know if it's real or if it's true, but we looked at it, we're like, that can't be. Or maybe it is. Like, you look at the size of the boys, you're like, maybe. So what's the secret? Is it Côte de Boeuf at training every day? Or are you eating at Brennan Snug? You're eating at Big Trev's place during the week for free? Or how you got such a massive pack that can still function?
Oh, it's all the above. It's, we're a tight group. The forwards, the front row themselves have lunches like every fortnight, and they're eating, Côte de Boeuf, foie gras, and all that type of stuff. So, but we do have a lot of big boys, and you had Thibaut Flamand as well, who's a tall guy, and he was number 6. So, I saw it as well when I was watching the game back, and I was like, oh, we're over 1,000. I definitely, we move on.
We were talking about NFL before, because you nearly went over there, and the money and stuff. Tell me it's like it is in the NFL, where the quarterback pays for his offensive line to eat. Does Antoine Dupont pay the bill for your lunch?
So when they won the Grand Slam, they took us to a restaurant, and they shouted us there, which was nice. But I'm sure there's a lot more where that's coming from.
And Johnny mentioned the size of the pack, just because we did have Will on last week, and we're talking to you playing the same position we've discussed. A little bit smaller apparently, but in the same ballpark. Have you got size 19 feet or what?
No. So all about that too. And I was like, I'm sure we're around the same. But no, he's way ahead. I'm a size 15, 16. So,
Still.
We struggle a bit.
Hey, aren't we all, Johnny? We're all 15, 16. No, we're not.
No, not as big as Big Will, but, it's still a struggle to find shoes.
And mate, another man I want to ask you about is Big Joe Tekori. So being the sort of cultural epicenter of Toulouse for a number of years, but he's obviously moving on at the end of the season. A lot of people now saying you are the heir apparent. You're the number 5 that can take his jersey and pay tribute to a man who has been a legend for the club and possibly kick it onto another level. And I think that game at the weekend shows that you're more than capable. But in terms of coming through the club with him, being around him, out drinking with him probably afterwards as well, can you keep up with him off the field? You're doing a great job on the field, but give us a little bit about the man, your relationship with him, the mentoring that he gives, and the pastoral care that he's given at the club as well.
Yeah, no, for me, I think without Joe and a lot of the other boys as well, but mainly Joe and his partner Helen, I think I would have gone back to Australia a long time ago, because, I think a lot of players, my position, can also say the same thing, but those guys are crucial to the club. Not only on the field, but mostly off of it. The boys are very drawn to Joe, and he's very welcoming, and a guy like that, of that stature and of that status, he's a very humble guy as well. And he's the first guy to put his hand up to help anyone out. But yeah, Joe's been he's been like a father figure to me in the team, but also like an older brother as well. You can have fun with him, but he also knows to put you in your place. No, but Joe, and it's a compliment for me for anyone to compare me to Joe on the field, but off the field, I can't keep up with him. I'm sure you've heard plenty of stories, but Joe can just keep going and going and going. He's unstoppable, and he'll turn up the next morning and he'll train, which is unbelievable. Like, a lot of guys can't do that, but Joe's a machine.
He was in the same ballpark. Anyway, you mentioned you had a night out back in Australia with Big Will Skelton. You must have been out with other. It'd be daft to be a big unit to be putting it away on a night out. He mentioned, I think, Joe mentioned Johnny Yannick Yeet was pretty good on a night out.
Yeah,
He's trying to keep up with him.
Oh yeah, one of the young guys, Movaka, he can definitely kick on. No, but there's not a lot of guys who can couple Joe. there's a few, and if you're in that ballpark, you know, you're a machine. But Joe's in his own league.
And as a youngster in Toulouse, big student town, you must be absolutely loving life in terms of the social with the players and the team. Like we joke about how much people can, like, classic cliche, but it must be a great time. Like with the academy boys, with the youngsters that are part of the setup in the pro team, you must have a great laugh in Toulouse together.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, well, and that's what I was saying. Like with the Espoir, the off-field stuff was like incredible, and also like just the lifestyle here in Toulouse is amazing. You know, you've got, when I was playing Espoir, I played with, you know, Rod Netty, you know, a lot of the boys who are now playing with the pros. So just seeing those boys, you know, play the Espoir and make their way up to the pros, like, it's good to see. But the boys are enjoying themselves, and they're showing their skill on the field as well.
Johnny mentioned that culture and lifestyle and off-field activities. You mentioned the Grand Slam winners came back and bought you dinner and stuff, but some of them, you know, the likes of Roman Entemack are the same age as you. So talk to us about what they like, the characters, him and Antoine Dupont, Cyril Bay, like, who are the big characters, and are they very down to earth and very grounded?
Yeah. Like those boys are real. Antoine's a real reserved guy. Like Toto, you know, keeps to himself, and you know, he's got his childhood friends, but, you know, we're all like a real tight-knit group, and that's something that Joe's really brought into the team, is like, whether we're a foreigner or a Frenchie, you know, this is one team and we're a family, and that's really like been built, you know, over the years, and not like before I even arrived. So like, yeah, Roman's not, you know, he's not a big loud person either, but he shows and he speaks through his actions on the field. Sissou's a character. Cyril Bell, he's a character, so he's funny. Drew Marchand is a funny dude. They like to joke around off the field, but when it's time to play, those boys really do show up. So they definitely do lead from the front.
And you said something I want to pick up on, mate. You said foreigner or Frenchie. What do you feel like? Do you have international aspirations? You mentioned growing up, you desperate to play Super Rugby and play for the Wallabies. Is it still something that'd be on your radar? Would you want to make a step up and play international for the Wallabies? Would you think about playing for France? Where would your head be with all that type of stuff?
Oh, and I've spoken to the boys about this a lot, but I want to play for France. Hey, France is definitely on my radar, and there's been like a little bit of discussion around it, and I'm working towards getting my passport. But yeah, that's definitely like, I want to play on, you know, top level, and, you know, like for me, I've been here now for over 3 years, so I would definitely love to play for France, and if that came up, I would definitely say yes to that, or I would definitely be putting my hand up for that. But until then, yeah, I want to, you know, play some good rugby for Toulouse and then see what comes from it.
And you said there'd been a little bit of talk. Like, have you had conversations with the staff, or has it been something internal at Toulouse that they've asked what you want to do, or word with Fabien Galtier or Sean Edwards? What's been said?
So William Savat used to be one of my first year here. He was the forwards coach. So we have constant conversations about that type of stuff, and he gives me tips about, you know, keeping my weight down and, you know, continuing to play the way I've been playing and stuff like that. I've spoken to Fabian about once, and that was just to gauge like where my head was at, and just seeing like what my aspirations were as a rugby player and stuff like that. Nothing, you know, nothing too serious, but I had spoken to him, and then after that, it's been it's just we see Will at the club a few times, and we say hello, and he always squeezes my stomach and asks me how much I weigh.
You squeeze his back?
Oh, mate, he's been out of the game for a long time, but he's rock solid, that guy.
He's a beast, mate. You should have seen him when he played as well. He's one of the biggest freaks I played against. He was an absolute barrel, and still now you see him and you're like, not too much has changed. He's massive.
Oh, yeah. And you hear stories about his off-field antics, and then he just rocks up and just kills everyone. So, no, he's an animal. And he's a good guy as well. So it's good to have him around the club as well.
And you mentioned the passport there as well. France obviously is home now, and hopefully it will be for a good number of years to come. We hope you get international recognition. We've had loads of guys on the show who are sort of weighing up whether to go for that French citizenship line. Johnny's done it. It's tough.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, anyone I've told that I'll be going for it has, it's not an easy thing, but you can only try.
Any advice, Johnny?
Well, my advice would be that Manny is a smart, articulate man who comes across really well. And if a muppet like me can do it, then you can definitely do it. That'd be my advice. Positivity, mate. That's it. They give you like a handbook. There's lots of things to learn. You go and have the meeting. You basically just flirt a little bit with, hope you get a nice girl, and then they give you a green tick. No, mate, I reckon it'd be awesome. It'd be awesome for you as well. I don't know when you could qualify. There's obviously a summer tour to Japan this year. There's 2 tests out there. It'd be an amazing testing ground to test out kids that have been doing some extremely positive performances in the top 14 from the youngsters. And obviously the Grand Slam boys are going to get a rest. So it could be the perfect time to test the next generation, which you are now part of. So well done. But no, mate, you can absolutely bash this test. It's easy. If I can do it, you can do it. Mate, looking ahead this weekend, do you feel that if you start this weekend as you finished in Toulouse, you can go over to Ulster and bash them in Belfast?
Yeah. I think like we finished training today on a real positive note, and everyone's pretty positive going into this week. We lost on the weekend, but I think we played a very, very good game, 1 man down, and we took a lot of positives from that. So I think everyone's really, everyone's upbeat and we're positive going over to Belfast and getting this win.
And are you staying overnight in Belfast as well? Because Johnny will know it well, but if Big Joe's come in and Yannick, you Belfast won't know what it is. It's a good night, Johnny.
It's a very good night, mate. You'll have a great time. You win and you'll have a great weekend.
Yeah, no, I think they've done this on purpose. So we stay the night before, but then after the game we come straight back. So that's
That Hugo Moller is a smart man, a quiet man, but a smart man.
Not his radio.
Mate, my best ever trip in Ireland, we went over to play in Leinster and then the game was snowed off. So they cancelled it. And we were like, well, we're here anyway, we'll go to Crystals. So we just went out in Dublin, had a full day drinking in the snow in Dublin, and ended up in town because they couldn't change the flight. So it might still happen. You never know. There might be snow in Belfast this weekend and you have an epic weekend. I wanted to ask you as well, Manny, before you go, it's obviously been quite tough. We didn't really touch on this, but quite tough during the Six Nations period when all internationals were away. It was that period where you had 6 straight losses, guys like yourself rolling up sleeves, trying to dig it out and get it back on a positive track. How difficult a period was that in the club? It looked like the boys had lost a little bit of confidence. Now things potentially with that performance at the weekend back on track, but how hard was that to go through for the group?
Yeah, pretty tough. And coming like into a club, I arrived in 2019, they had won. The following year, COVID, and and then following up with the double championship, like it's a historically like very successful club. So just going through those consecutive losses and winning one and then going back to a loss was real tough on not only the players but the coaching staff and like the supporters as well, and the whole club as a whole. So I think to have those boys back was definitely a good thing for us. But I really credit the boys who were behind and who, like you said, pulled their sleeves up and try to bring something out. And we got some good wins as well, against the first top of the table, Bordeaux and Montpellier. So we were capable, and I think it was just a bit of confidence there for the boys. And now that that's passed and we got these next few tough games against Ulster and then back to, La Rochelle and Toulon, those are definitely some tough games. So it's good to have the boys back. And I think now that we're over that little slump, hopefully we can make a run for the finals now.
Fingers crossed you're back on track. And thanks so much for coming on and sharing your story. It's been a hell of a journey so far, from league to potentially the NFL, now to France winning the double. Hopefully it ends in international honours with France. So good luck with it all.
Yeah, fingers crossed. No, I appreciate you guys for having me.
Thank you, Manny. Good luck this weekend, mate.
All right, cheers, lads.
Hell of a story, that, Johnny. I don't know if I'd have made the same call choosing rugby union over the NFL, but hey.
Mate, we're joking, but in his position, he will go on to have a phenomenal career now at Toulouse. And even if it's not Toulouse, something goes wrong, he will have a career now in the top 14 as a tight headlock where he will go on and smash it. Fingers crossed, touch wood, that he stays injury free. But again, massive unit. very talented, very physical, but clear with the way he talks, very smart, very articulate, a thinker. And you can also see the way he affects the game on the gain line. He's a smart player. So again, he's right at the start of a journey, but great to have him on. Almost similar, we had Thibaut Flamand on before he became a French international. There's another one. They play in the same team. He could be the 10th member of the next Grand Slam side, but there you go. He's going to go and have a great career. And again, the long-term solution to Joe Tekori retiring, he's right there. We just had him on. He was superb at the weekend. He's been class every time I've watched him this season in the top 14, consistently. And I've absolutely no qualms at all about the fact he's going to go on to be a top player.
And fascinating that he grew up wanting to be a Wallaby. Now he couldn't have been clearer. He really wants to be a French international. And people in Australian rugby must be looking at him now and thinking, you know, he would be great to have on board. So another one that's kind of slipped the net, I guess, and French rugby are clearly looking at him.
But it's different styles as well. So you're coming through the Australian system, you're looking at Super Rugby. Would he be fit to play Super Rugby age 17, 18? Maybe not. They might think he maybe didn't have, with Will Skelton, that was his slight as well. Everyone targeted and said he wouldn't be right for Super Rugby and he wouldn't be right for international rugby. But again, top 14 clubs, what they do is they look for people with a point of difference. And that's what this guy has. That's what Manny has. He has a point of difference. He can demolish a gain line. He can get you over one. He's carrying boy backward. He can compete for ball. He affects every single maul he's involved in. Again, the sort of dirty stuff that we don't want to talk about. He gets involved in the tight aspects of the game. So he's got a point of difference. There's no better place to learn than in the academy at Toulouse with the boys that he was mentioning. And the team that he's around, the coaching structures that you're around, and again, the contact you have with the club. William Servat is my old coach. He wants to know how I'm getting on. Clearly, it's the path is set for him. If he chooses to stick to it and apply himself, he could potentially be a French international quite soon. So no, really interesting bloke, and it was really cool to have him on.
Right, we will look ahead to the Champions Cup round of 16 second legs a bit more very shortly, but it's about time we did our meter moment of the week, isn't it? So what have you got for us, Johnny?
Really easy this week, mate. A friend of the show, a former guest, I commented on his game for BT at the weekend. As an Englishman playing in France against a Premiership side, Zach Mercer was absolutely ridiculous at the weekend. Carries, offloads, his reading of the game, his finishing, again, performing cuts in the middle of the field with Forletta, the loose head prop, and finishing from halfway, his speed off the base, his jackling. We talk about points of difference, but Zach Mercer at the weekend was a massive point of difference against English opposition, which he'll have absolutely loved, and it'll be huge for him. I hope Eddie was taking notes and watching, because I think Zach has it all. He's got all the elements to be one of the best back rowers in the world. Player of the round, star of the match, and easily 100% the meter moment of this weekend's games was his performance against Harlequins.
Not only up against English opposition, up against
Don Brunt. Hey, and again, we didn't even say his name. Again, part of the team depends which team you're part of, but Montpellier were utterly dominant, but Zach was party to every dominant part of that play, both sides of the ball. So a huge display, sticking his hand up and just letting everyone know that he's still there. But, live on TV to do that against the incumbent, the man that's in there that everyone's talking about every single week, and to obliterate the opposition was pretty special. So a cool moment for him, cool moment for his family as well. They'll have absolutely loved that. And
it might not be this summer, but do you think Eddie will be on the phone and sort of suggesting that he maybe come back sooner rather than later?
Mate, it clearly comes down to, I think Montpellier as a club have got more in terms of paying power than essentially any English Premiership side. It will come down to Zach's desires and what he wants to do. If he's happy and he's in Montpellier and he's enjoying life, he's just got engaged, his missus seems to be enjoying life down there as well, and they're going to pay him all the money in the world, he'll stay. But if he's got a burning desire to play for England and be part of international rugby, he'll come back and take a pay cut. And that's the decision he's going to have to make, and only he knows the answer. Only Zach knows what he wants to do. Again, weirdly, we were chatting to people around us in the stadium during commentary at halftime as well, and they were just like, he's so much better than anything we've ever had at 8. And I was like, I don't want to remind you that I used to play here, so I'll take myself out of this conversation. But they were like, compared to Pierre Spies, who came, the Springbok, miles better. Compared to a young Louis Picamol, miles better. Like, that's how highly they rate Zach. That's what he's done. Like, he leads the league in meters, offloads, carries, everything. And he's constant. Every single week he's performing. So they absolutely love him. I know the staff love him as well. They've all just re-signed to 2025. It's whether they want to keep him and take him on that journey. And again, if they offer him to extend early, a year out from him being off contract, then he's got some serious decisions to make. But look, he's loved there at the club. He was sensational at the weekend. But yeah, he's going to have some decisions to be making over the next 18 months. You're absolutely right.
That was Johnny's Meter moment of the week. And Meter is the world's #1 wireless meat thermometer, recently making over 11 million cooks better with their game-changing app and completely wireless Bluetooth meat probe. You can use it on a barbecue, in the oven, or in a pan, and get your hands on one at meter.com. Plus, we've upped the stakes, haven't we, Johnny? And you can now get 20% off any full price item instead of 10%. All you have to do is enter the code FrenchPod20 at checkout. That's FrenchPod20 instead of FrenchPod10. And you get 20% off any full price item at meter.com. Let's look now ahead to the second legs of the Champions Cup round of 16 and maybe a bit beyond. It's looking good for Racing, isn't it, Johnny? With a home quarterfinal against Bristol or Sale just jumping ahead a little bit if they finish the job against Stad, which most people are assuming they will.
It looks comfortable. It's a wee bit sad for Stade Francais being their closest rivals or their nearest and dearest rivals, but Racing are looking really comfortable back at the arena. They've got Stad's number, and it just looks too easy. An easy home win for Racing, I would say, this weekend. But I think we'd all like to see Stade Francais compete a little bit harder, make it a little bit closer. Again, for their end of season, they're not really competing for anything now, but again, for a little bit of respect and a bit of what they want to do next year. They've got people retiring as well. You always want to finish on a good note, but for Racing, yeah, comfortably going through, easy win this weekend back at home. We just want to see a little bit of dog from Stade Francais, a little bit of something different, not another red card, but a little bit more positivity for them, because they look, again, it looks like a little bit of a difficult place to be right now.
You mentioned the red card. Tolu Latu, 11-week ban for him, 2 red cards, 6 yellow cards this season, which we must be getting on for a record, probably not quite there yet. And that, as well as that, Hans-Peter Wild has come out backing Gonzalo Quesada, but talking very openly in the public about a lack of leaders, potentially the coaching setup as a whole. So what do you make of the whole situation at Stade at the moment?
Mate, you're missing the key part is how he talked about Latu, which was disgraceful, outing him as having an alcohol problem in the press, essentially calling him an alcoholic in national press, which is disgraceful. And there are certain sort of standards and values and things that we talk about in rugby, and a lot gets dealt with in-house. I don't know if that's true or false, but I know that every director of rugby, every president or most presidents or people at the head of any type of organization should not be doing that to any type of employee or any type of player that's under their control in a public domain. It's embarrassing. And I feel really bad for him and his family back home. Obviously, he's a long way from home. And to read that, or if that travels, it's incredibly concerning for his family. So if there is issue, firstly, I hope that he's okay, and I hope that he's getting the help that he needs. But I do not think that anybody in any position of power should be saying that type of thing in the public about their staff. I think it's a disgrace.
Yeah, you hope the right support is given to him and he's surrounded by the right people. But if that is coming out in the public domain, it doesn't say a lot for the culture and the environment of the club at the moment, does it?
But he's not there. This is the thing. So this is a guy that doesn't spend any time day to day in the club. I don't know what conversations are had with Quesada, who by all accounts is a superb bloke, a great man. Everyone loves working with him, loves working for him. But those aren't the words of somebody, and that's somebody that's removed from the club quite considerably, who won't know Latu as a person, but making that comment in national press. So there's nothing come from within the club, so to speak, which makes this so much harder. But I just think it's wrong. Fundamentally, you wouldn't say that about anybody in a national newspaper.
And Clermont were well beaten by Leicester, and they've lost 5 of their last 6 home European games now. So Stade Marcel Michelin, a stadium that was once a fortress, certainly not in Europe at the moment.
Look, they're going through transition. Again, there's weird things. There's things that I've picked up this year, like they can't defend mauls. Weirdly, again, lineout's never been their strong suit. But simple things like defending mauls, Leicester gave them a lesson in efficiency, simple rugby, an excellent kicking display, an excellent maul. And I thought Clermont would have had enough to win the home leg. But now, like, you can't see them going to Welford Road and doing anything. Ford, Genge, Stewart, they're flying high in the Prem, and they're back home at Welford Road. So that'll be another win probably for Leicester. But Clermont as a club, changed to coaching staff. There's been a transition for playing staff as well. You've got people, big profile people moving on at the end of the season. Camille Lopez moving down to Bayonne. Morgan Parra's future, we still don't know. So you kind of get the feeling like Clermont at the minute is a little bit unsettled. And it has been for 6 months, possibly more.
And we chatted about it earlier on, but what's your gut feeling? Is Montpellier going to hold on to their lead away at Quins to set up an all-French quarterfinal at La Rochelle?
I think Quins will be better at the Stoop, but Montpellier looked incredibly comfortable for the first 40 minutes before they started making changes and taking Reinach and Zach Mercer and everybody off. And I think that overturning 2 scores at the Stoop will be very hard for Quins, although they can be excellent. But the way that Montpellier were able to contain them for long periods, and defensively, how dominant they were at the weekend. I think if they set their stall out and they defend in the same manner with the same enthusiasm, they possibly get the chance to go away and win away from home this weekend as well, with their first string. So, no, I think that could be another win for Montpellier, but I think certainly they'll have enough to go through to the next round and make it an all-French affair.
And put your money where your mouth is. Are Manny and Toulouse going to turn it around away at Ulster?
I haven't. The only thing that would make me doubt it would be the forecast. If it was snowing, or if it was absolutely pouring and it became an absolute mudfest. But I think they've kind of got the bit between their teeth. And I think it has been a difficult period. I wanted to ask Manny more about it, but we kind of got carried away with time. I think it's been a difficult period for Toulouse without everyone there. But I think they'll have that sort of drive, that determination, to really go there to deep, dark places for each other and try and dig something out. So it's a 6-point advantage, right? So I think they've got enough to go over and beat Ulster by 6 points. I think if they'd had 50 men on the field, they'd have beaten Ulster, not comfortably, but they would have beaten them. But I think now that they found that extra factor, that extra bit of spice that Benji likes to talk about. And I think they'll bring it this weekend, and I think they'll win away in Belfast. Thanks,
Johnny. Huge weekend of European rugby ahead. A big thanks to Manny Meafou for joining us, and a massive thanks to all you guys for listening as well. Make sure you hit subscribe, leave us a nice review if you can as well. Check us out on RugbyPass and on YouTube, and we'll be back with another episode next week. Au revoir, Johnny.
See you, mate.